Good evening. I want to thank everyone for being here with us tonight as we go about the business of the county. I'll call our August 7th, 2023 meeting of Pickens County Council to order. Again, thank you all for being here on this rainy, dreary night as we work through our agenda to work on the projects and things and beings of county government. This time I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Roy Costner if he would please lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
You'll please stand and I'll speak very loud. This is not working at all. Let us pray. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the many blessings that you give us. Lord, this has been a difficult couple of weeks for the county with Officer Hare and Mr. Quinn that passed away. Pray for those families. Lord, there's more than just that. There's lots of folks out within Pickens County that need a healing hand and a touch and a visit from you. We just ask that you keep your hand upon us as we make decisions about the county, that we do it with you in our hearts. Lord, we continue to pray for our emergency responders and our military service personnel, both here and abroad. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on tonight's agenda is public forum. We'll now hold our public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to give us feedback on issues that you may deem important. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call our first speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, I call Brittany Fowler. Brittany Fowler. Richard McWay.
This week, or last week, Pickens County Schools went into session. And with that came the always questionable requirements for vaccines. There are 8 vaccines on that schedule, which are presumed to be safe and effective, which, with all of my research, that is just not the case. And I'd like to point out, this is a book, Turtles All the Way Down. This goes into great detail regarding vaccine science and myth. I know this is a very hotly contested subject, people on both sides of the discussion here. My only concern is for the children and for those parents who are in a position to have to take their kids into the doc and get these vaccines. I just have a few suggestions for you. Read those inserts completely and take your time to read them. There's a lot of information there that may not you have been well aware of. Has the doc done informed consent? This is critical when any procedure is done, that you have informed consent, that you know exactly the pros, the cons of any procedure, this case being these injections. Ask about VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. If vaccines were safe and effective, we wouldn't have a VAERS where these adverse events can be reported. There's a little bit of contradiction there. And another thing to ask you, Doc, are these vaccines tested against a placebo? And that answer is critical. Every bit of research I have done, and I just listened to 12 hours plus of docs covering this very subject, they are not tested against a placebo. They are tested against a probably earlier version of that vaccine, which is not going to give you any valuable data at all. If you want to control part of the study, look at the Amish in Pennsylvania and Ohio. They never get vaccines. They don't have any disease. They don't get autism. They don't get SIDS. They don't get autoimmune disease. All around the country where vaccines are being performed, that's a big issue. I don't know if everybody or anybody knows of Steve Kirsch. He is an MIT grad. He's gone on a rampage about all vaccines. I've been following him for probably 6 months now. I get 2 or 3 emails a week from him.
Thank you, sir.
It's over?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
sir.
Steve Haney.
My name's Steve Haney. I live in Easley. And as Mr. Costner pointed out earlier, Alan Quinn died in the last couple of weeks. For years, Alan Quinn has been coming to county council meetings every month. You allow the public to attend committee of the whole meetings, Alan was there. He was involved, he was engaged, he cared about Pickens County. His daughter had to get a job outside of Pickens County where she could get a high-paying job, and after that, he became determined to bring jobs to Pickens County. So he ran for public office a few times. He came here and badgered you guys about bringing jobs to Pickens County. His name, Alan Quinn, and jobs in Pickens County are synonymous. You can't divide them. It was his #1 issue, and he never let up on it. You know this, the public knows this. So, Pickens County is going to have a second industrial park one day. It wouldn't kill you if you named it after Alan Quinn. And you're laughing, but you know, if you don't name an industrial park after Alan Quinn, who selfishly wanted, selflessly, make sure you get that right, Megan, selflessly wanted jobs in Pickens County, you could at least name an access road or a perimeter road in a industrial park after Alan Quinn to recognize somebody who really did care about the people in Pickens County. He wanted jobs here. It would benefit everybody. Did not put a penny in his pocket, didn't do anything to make his land worth more. He really cared about the people of Pickens County. It's a possibility. You can do this and you won't offend anybody. Lots of people voted for him. You can do this. Name something after Alan Quinn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haney.
Pat Mulkey.
Good evening, folks. I'm here for a couple reasons, but first of all, some folks are in a meeting in Oconee County right now. There's something going on in the state that's just not Pickens County that's affecting small business to the core. The restaurants and small bars, small venues, and it's due to legislation that was introduced in the state, which has made their insurance rates absolutely go insane, skyrocket. Prime example, there have been 7 small restaurant, mom and pop restaurant venues that have had to close because their insurance liability went from $3,500 a year to $75,000 a year. And we're about to lose a lot more if something's not done. And I think we need to address our state legislatures' concerns about this, because your favorite little small restaurant that might serve beer and wine, they are affected. It's just not music venues, but it seems that the musicians and small mom and pop places are the ones stepping up on this. So the Facebook page for it is SC Venue Crisis, and that can get you the links to the state. This is a statewide group that have come together. It's being backed by the Hospitality Association. This affects wineries, small breweries, mom and pop places that sell wine in their stores. This is a big issue, and I think the leadership of Pickens County needs to get on board and help out with that. Second of all, we have had, I want to say, first of all, not second of all, I'm real proud that how the county and the local cities have come together. We've had unprecedented storms damage this month, from July 1st until the last day, and then of course this evening, more damage done. In that, I've heard some folks up in the Dacresville area get a little upset because they're cleaning up their own debris, and when they go to the recycling stations, they're being sent with a brush because they don't have no place to dump it in dumpsters all the way across the county to the main landfill. In times like this, I think we need to work together, do if you have to put extra dumpsters or just a place that can be dumped, so citizens don't have to make 3 trips to the landfill, go once to the convenience center, and then we as citizens and the county can deal with it later. Just a little convenience for these convenience centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monkey.
Dawn Crooks.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to let you guys know, we prepared a packet of information for you guys for the, to advocate for the preservation and conservation districts within the UDSO, along with adding architectural review board. So we prepared some stuff for you guys to take home, and it's a little bit of information regarding what's going on in Greenville County and their updated ordinances, and along with Oconee County, and both have implemented their updated ordinances with a review board of conservation districts. This protects the waterways, farmlands, and preserves the wildlife. This packet of information gives you examples of what other counties have adopted and what we would like to see in Pickens County. We also included the latest bill that has been implemented onto the State House floor. Is H3236. It's a bill that allows municipalities to annex an area by ordinance only, provided that this person lives within a donut hole, and within 5 years, this property that is in the donut hole will become a municipality annexed piece of property. So you don't have to have permission petition or anything. You will automatically be annexed into a municipality if you're in a donut hole. So we're advocating for you guys to step up and help us so that this legislation bill will not go past the State House floor. We also would like for you guys to implement some kind of ordinance that protects the unincorporated areas within our districts, so that we are not annexed into a donut hole. I don't know how we do this, but I think we all should come together and have some kind of review or something that stops the municipalities from taking all of our unincorporated land. So with this packet, we just ask you guys to review it and see if you would at least consider putting some of this in our USDO. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Tala Moore.
Hello, my name is Tala, and I'm a senior at Easley High School. I'm just here to talk about my concern with the amount of housing developments and apartments that are being built in Pickens County and around Easley. It really affects the school, and more specifically Easley High School. It's always been 32 students to 1 teacher, which makes it really hard for students to have a connection with their teacher and be able to ask for help in learning. Also, the roads in this area and the roads really just in Pickens period, I do not think are really meant for the amount of people that are coming in with the amount of apartment buildings and housing developments that are being built. Around Easley High School specifically, there are no sidewalks, and I personally have friends and I know people who walk to and from school, and they're walking in the grass that is right by the road because there's no sidewalks. It's very dangerous. Also, just land and animals, a lot of concern for them. I do have this picture printed out kind of small, and this is just a picture of what it's like during class change every day. If I could hand this to anybody to get it to you guys, yeah. I just request that you look at this, and this is just changing classes every day, but that's basically all. Thank you guys.
Thank you so very much.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, this concludes the public forum.
As it's been mentioned a couple of times tonight, Mr. Quinn did pass away this week, and he was faithful to be here and to speak and share what was on his mind and on his heart. While we didn't always agree or see eye to eye, we usually could find some sort of common ground, and that's something I did appreciate about Mr. Quinn. And I would like to take just a few moments to honor Mr. Quinn. Thank you, Mr. Quinn, for all you've done for the county and the way you've advocated. Item 3 on tonight's agenda is approval of our minutes. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes for the July 10th, 2023 meeting and the July 17th, 2023 special called meeting. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Councilman Lawless. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Linville. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4 on tonight's agenda is the administrator's report. Mr. Roper.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to talk about, I guess, 3 main issues. Of course, before I get to that, I want to, of course, echo some of the thoughts that have already been mentioned tonight, talking about our friends and neighbors over in Easley and the difficult time it is for that community, difficult time it is for that law enforcement and emergency services community, and know that there'll be a special event there tomorrow, recognizing the Officer Hare and his life and his work and his sacrifice. So our hearts are with them tonight, and we're thoughtful about them. We're doing what we can to help the Easley City folks come together and memorialize that. So the county will be doing some backfilling on some of the services so that they can all be together at this difficult time. So we're mindful of that. We're also mindful of the storms that's already been referenced tonight. Hope everyone is safe. It happened right before the meeting got underway, so I know it caused some travel issues for some folks, and we hope that the county came through that well. The comments about brush is something that we do look at from time to time. We have to make sure that we're able to get the municipal garbage, the other things, the recycling delivered at in an efficient way, but there have been instances where we've had, I think the Love and Care Road community, you'll remember we staged some dumpsters there. So from time to time, it's a good idea that Mr. Mulkey brings up. In terms of what I had prepared to talk about, one thing is, obviously we're trying this year to be motivated as a county staff by our plan, our purpose, and our people, as council instructed us. So we try to analyze everything that way. I know you all are used to, and the 6 of you are used to this. You get a weekly report from me that's an update on certain things that the staff is doing. I want to draw particular attention to the one that you will receive tomorrow. It might be easy for you to get that and say, yeah, I'll review that later. That's just similar to the same report we've been getting. But the one that you're getting tomorrow is, for lack of a better, we had a media member here, to paraphrase a media way to characterize it. It's a special edition. It's a special edition of the weekly report designed to give you an update on where we are at the mid-year mark on many of your goals. So it sets out your goals, it sets out what we've done department by department, where we feel like we've accomplished things and where we're in the process of working on them. So I invite you to look at that document, and I invite you to give me feedback. Where are we not on pace, and do we need to rededicate ourselves? I take that direction from council seriously. I've been motivating staff in that regard, and so I want you to look at that document and hope that it is helpful to you. Along the same lines, and there's been some mention tonight, I appreciate the citizens that were here tonight to talk about our ongoing UDSO conversation. I want to just kind of give an overview for the public's purpose so that they'll know where we are. One of the goals you set for the year was to revisit our UDSO because you saw some of the planning limitations in our existing document and the growth that was happening in our county. So you asked staff to start working on that. Staff came back to you and asked for a moratorium so that we could have that conversation in a more reasonable and rational way rather than having to hit a moving target as things came in. It's a 6-month moratorium that will expire on October 3rd. There's contemplation in the moratorium ordinance for a 90-day extension of that. But council, we are working as a staff towards that October 3rd deadline. And one of the ways that we've done that is we stood up on our online portal a way that the public could make comments. And if you look on our planning page, you'll see the online citizen input option there for people to give their feedback. But in addition to that, we've had 4 now public forums in addition to the regular monthly public forum that happens in this meeting and the public meetings where you all have had workshops on the UDSO over the last few months. We've had 4 others. And one of those was a public hearing that the Pickens County Planning Commission held on May 8th, where they received input from the public on what the public was looking for. And then we took our show on the road, for lack of a better way of putting it. We had three public meetings in 3 different parts of the county. One at the Easley Library. We then had one at the Liberty Pickens County Performing Arts Center, and then we had one in Central, or in Clemson at the, I guess that's still Central. Mr. Lawless, would you say Clemson or Central? Clemson? Yeah, okay. Clemson and Central. It's got a Clemson address there at the fire station at the community room. So we're trying to stay in this conversation with the public. I appreciate all of you who have participated. I appreciate all of you who have taken time out to come and give your input. We are listening to that closely. We're excited to get back together with you all now that we've received a lot of that information, while you all have had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions of staff, and staff's had an opportunity to put together some information. We're moving to a very important phase in this process. And so we're looking forward to us all getting back together at a committee workshop setting and compare notes on what we've learned over these last couple of months as we work forward for something that the public and we can all be proud of. So I just wanted to kind of give that general update of where we are and how staff is looking forward to getting back together with you all in a workshop type environment to synthesize what we've learned. Many of you, and we've received letters and emails, and I've even had a couple of county employees reach out to me about fundraising information they're getting from the Pickens County Humane Society. But I want to make sure that this is clear, because even a couple of my employees were not getting it correct when they were asking me why we didn't support our shelter anymore. And so I want to make clear that the Pickens County Humane Society is a private entity. They're a private 501 organization. They receive private funds from sources that they solicit funding for, and they do important work. They do important work in bringing animals to the public's attention, animals that they get from around the upstate. These are animals that they may be getting in other counties as well as Pickens County, and finding suitable homes for them. But I want to make it clear that we have not changed our operation or our financing of the Pickens County Animal Shelter, which is not soliciting funds because you all in this room contribute funds to it every single year when you pay your taxes. It's a taxpayer-supported entity. That shelter is full, and it's full like many of the shelters are full. But I wanted to give you some data related to that. Since Pickens County established the Pickens County Animal Shelter and changed the county ordinance, some of you were on county council when that happened, to allow for adoption of animals from our, what was then just the dog pound, with one way to get out of the dog pound if you weren't taken back by your owners. Y'all changed all that in 2018, and since then, the shelter has taken in almost 12,000 animals during that time period. Average monthly intake is over 100 animals a month. That number's trended down a little bit, and we've been thankful for that. But we have been able to spay and neuter more than 5,000 animals. We've returned a huge number, hundreds and hundreds, back to their owners, and found good homes for a majority of the animals. So much so that in month after month after month, we qualify for the no-kill designation, which basically means we're not eliminating animals for space. We're only eliminating animals because of illness or other reasons. There's some months where we'll have animals that just stay in the shelter for months and months and months, and that's not good for them either, so sometimes we have to make that difficult decision. But I want to encourage everyone to look at the Humane Society, recognize what they're doing, appreciate what they're doing, support them if you feel led, but do not confuse it with the Pickens County Animal Shelter, which is a taxpayer-funded organization. People can surrender animals to the Humane Society. The Humane Society can go to other shelters and other organizations and get animals to adopt out of their facility. That is important work, but it's important to recognize the distinction of our shelter. That is the back end of Pickens County Animal Control. Our shelter, we don't pick our animals. The sheriff's office picks them for us. The community calls in a complaint, the sheriff's office picks up an animal, we find it there in the little holding room in the morning, and we try to figure out what's the best thing we can do for that animal. 12,000 since we changed to that mechanism. So a couple things there, and I'm not doing justice to this problem if I don't mention the fine folks at Clemson Paw Partners. Humane Society, private. Pickens County Animal Shelter, public. Clemson Paw Partners, a public-private partnership insofar as the county provides them the facility. We also provide them a certain number of vouchers to spay and neuter every month. So there is a partnership aspect to that. They are also in the business of raising funds, soliciting funds, and trying to grow their project. So it's sort of a three-legged stool in this county: private, public, and completely public. Keep that in mind. The only other thing I would say here is you can see Tubby and Rocky right there in those pictures. Those dogs are fully vetted, available for adoption right now at the Pickens County Animal Shelter. You can call 898-5936 or look us up online. We've got plenty of good animals if people would consider adopting the best friend that they'll ever have. Consider adopting them. You may be looking at a purebred dog that you're buying from a groomer, and that's a wonderful, a breeder, that's a wonderful thing, and people get some wonderful animals that way. And they get some wonderful animals this way too. All three of mine have come from this mechanism. So I just want to encourage people to do that. And the other thing I want to encourage people to do is spay and neuter their pets. 12,000 unwanted animals just in the last few years in Pickens County alone. It's sobering, but I do want to point that out because all three legs of this stool have important work to do, and we need to support their work. And then a couple of recognitions. Wanted to, on behalf of staff, congratulate Vice Chairman Roy Costner for being named the president of the South Carolina Association of Counties. As I understand it, the first time a Pickens County council member has been the president of that organization in 30 years. So it's no small thing, and we wanted to say on behalf of staff, we're proud to have you there representing us. We look forward to finding different ways we can take advantage of you in this organization to make our service to the people of Pickens County more efficient. And similarly, we want, thank you also to Chairman Chris Bowers, who I imagine had to take vacation days to do this. I did it on his own time without any pay, traveled with a group of folks from Pickens County in the Behavioral Health Crisis Mapping Policy Academy. They went up there for 3 days and tried to look at ways that Pickens County is not living up to the needs of our citizens when it comes to their behavioral and mental health. And spent 3 days up there with a team. As I understand it, this was a grant that came to them so that their expenses were reimbursed, but they received no pay for this hard work they did on behalf of our county. In addition to having Behavioral Health Services Director Angie Farmer up there, we also had Dr. Jennifer Hudson with Prisma there, County Council Chairman and Prisma Health Baptist Easley, Emergency Room Director Chris Bowers, along with several other folks that were there learning what we could do and what we could do better for those 3 days. So we wanted to thank the chairman for that work and look forward to that paying dividends for our most vulnerable folks here in our community. Members of council, members of the public, that concludes my prepared remarks. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Rooker?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sada?
what is the proof of legal residence that's required on a 4% designation on your home?
So the normal assessment per state law on a piece of property, whether it's your home, whether it's your business, whether it's an industry, is 6% of the assessed value. The state law allows for an exemption to get you down to 4%, but you have to produce certain proof to qualify for that exemption. That proof includes things like driver's license, car registration, in some instances your income tax. I can get you an inclusive list, but it's set out in state law. It's state law and not county policy, but I can get you a copy of that state law.
The reason I asked is because somebody was asked for their income tax form, and I thought it was a little bit invasive, but you're saying the state law allows that?
It does, and I'll give you part of the reason. I don't pretend to know all of the reason, but part of the reason is if someone is claiming business income in a piece of property on their income tax, then that would tend to argue that it's not their residence.
Gotcha.
Some folks can have a home-based business, but what if you have, for example, a home-based business in Atlanta, Georgia, and you also have a home-based business in Pickens, South Carolina, we need to double-check those sorts of things.
Yeah, the second thing is, hiring litter crews was difficult, has been difficult, and we talked about that. As an alternative, I suggested that we do what the state does, which they contract out those roads. I've got another alternative I want to show you. It's a suggestion for you. It's basically called a road rake, and they're starting to buy these around, different municipalities and things like that. And it actually just picks up the trash, so it actually replaces the vehicle actually picking it up. It's something they just
It's like a trash,
they put on their little tractor and it cleans it up supposedly pretty efficiently.
like a trash Zamboni.
Yeah, because I am like really big on all the
No,
litter on
thank
the
you.
road.
Thank you for that.
The other thing is and finally, there's a house on 178 that's heading up towards Highway 11. It's on the left side up there. And the neighbors filed a complaint up there in June of 2022 about all the trash and all the junk in the yard. And I followed up 6 times on that, and Megan is aware of that. When I get the reports coming back to me, it's always, we've contacted the owner, we couldn't contact the owner, we've mailed warnings, he's trying to get a junkyard permit. It doesn't really seem to be getting reconciled. It's been 13 months now. Neighbors are still complaining. I drove up there Friday night just to see with my own eyes. I understand why they're complaining. If you could personally look into that, and get back to me and let me know the status of that.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. So there's different circumstances, and I'll take advantage of your question to talk a little policy here.
Okay.
Because if you all have a different policy, you're the policy folks. But there's different circumstances that call for different responses. That's a long-standing property condition up there, and the property owner has made, it's right before you get to Montville School, if the one I'm thinking about, yeah. The property owner has made some steps towards cleaning up, particularly closer to the road, but it is a long-standing junkyard, a long-standing pre-existing to our ordinance junkyard. So we've tried to work with that property owner, short of just taking them to the magistrate, but I absolutely will commit to you that I'll visit it personally and report back with what I find.
Yeah, I think in some cases, and I've learned following these up, whether it's Trotter Road or Red Hill Road, I think there's some weaknesses in the process, and we saw that.
Right.
With the enforcement, we've seen that with the courts. I think that case up there is a pretty intimidating one. And this is why I've always felt that these officers need to be Class 3 officers with a gun and a badge and a car. In your weekly report and briefing of July 24th, it was mentioned the county's talking to the sheriff's office about making those officers Class 3 officers. Is those discussions occurring? Is there any possibility of that?
Yeah, it is. We've actually looked a little further into what would SLED require. And again, I'm not going to be able to give you this entire process, but the next step for us is to achieve an ORI number. Once we have an ORI number, that gives us the ability to send folks to the academy and be Class 3 officers. So we met with the Chief James and with some of his staff about that process and what we could do to jumpstart that process. So we're moving along with that.
Thank you. Very good.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman.
so I'm going to call you Bob Barker because you said
I'm sorry.
Bob Barker because you spay and neuter your pets.
Right.
I just thought that was funny. But I have a quick question about that. So you were mentioning the Humane Society and then the Paw Partners between the three. Does the Humane Society work with our current system now to try to help place some of those animals?
They do from time to time come and get animals from our facility. It's not, I don't want to suggest this is in any way pejorative. I don't mean it that way or derogatory. Apologize.
Pejorative?
But I mean this in the best sense possible. Let me put it that way, Mr. Vice Chairman. They don't come frequently, but they do come, and when they come, we're very thankful for them taking some of the animals out. So we are excited when they do come and help out. They have different challenges than we have. They have fundraising challenges. They need to be able to demonstrate certain things to fundraise. We are more, I don't know how to put this, because I've got the 3 dogs that I've had. 2 of them came from their facility. 1 came from our animal shelter. They're pit bull mixes. I don't care what we try to pretend they are. They're pit bull mixes, and we love them. But the Humane Society has to fundraise. They have to find animals that will help them fundraise and that they can adopt, and we appreciate and support that. So they do come by, but not as much as we would like. That's true of any rescue out there. We would love for them to come by more.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. The other thing that I'd like to find out about, because I know that the SCAC were talking about legislation for the municipalities have, to what Councilman Sada was talking about, on property that has been kind of abandoned, and I think the municipalities, there is a law where they can go in and clean it up and put that on a tax bill for who, in a lot of those cases, people who aren't living here that own the property somewhere else. But the counties don't have that. Is that the way I understand it?
That's correct. In the past, we've tried to get property owners to agree to pay it, but we don't have the direct statutory authority to say that the money we have to spend to dispose of trash on their private property, we can recoup through the tax bill. Municipalities have that tool. And the bill that you're talking about that's been in front of the General Assembly more than once is pending there now, would give the counties the same tools that the cities have to be able to recoup those costs. If you go around a county of the size of Pickens, you can find a lot of opportunities for us to do this sort of thing, and we could exhaust our funds doing it. We could spend a great deal of time. So we would love for that to have that tool in our toolbox. If you could mention it to your folks there, and everyone mention that to their representatives and state senators, that letting counties have that same authority that cities already have would be a huge tool in our favor. I will give one plug, though, before we move on for this, something that county employees have been doing, showing their commitment to public service. We have, in the last year, started what we call the Public Employee Service Corps. We've gone, it's inappropriate for the county government to enter private property and start cleaning up private property. Now, if we had because we'd be spending your money to clean up somebody else's land. That might bother you. But so what we have done is we've come up with a mechanism where county employees, city employees, we've offered it to the cities as well. If they feel one particular situation is particularly heart-rending, if it's a health issue or something like that, but the government can't come in and do it heavy-handedly, that on our own time, through the United Way, we can volunteer our time and clean up property. So it's something that several county employees have taken advantage of. We think it's new in the state. We're very proud of it. We hope to see people see more and more of it. The Public Employee Service Corps.
Cool, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Roper? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5, which is the committee reports. The Committee of the Whole met, on July 17th. Log number 214, sewer capacity. I made the motion to allow the City of Clemson into the sewer capacity study. Motion was seconded by Councilman Henry Wilson and carried unanimously. No second is required, as this comes as a recommendation from the committee. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Log number 211, 2023 A-tax funding applications. Councilman Sada made a motion to allocate $7,000 of A-tax funding to the City of Pickens and reimburse the county $30,000 regarding the Independence Day spectacular event. Motion was seconded by Councilman Wilson. I amended the original motion stating that would like to build a campaign to see if they help pay any expenses of the $30,000 and $7,000 before allocating tax money. Motion was seconded by Councilwoman Linville. The motion failed 1-5 with Councilwoman Linville in favor. Vice Chair Roy Costner made a motion stating he would like the City of Pickens to fill out an application to be turned in to the A-tax committee and the $7,000 to be contingent on the application. Motion was seconded by Councilman Sada and approved unanimously 6-0. Councilman Wilson made a motion to amend the total from $7,000 to $10,100 of A-tax funding for the City of Pickens for life safety. Motion was seconded by Councilman Sada. The motion carried 5-1 with Councilwoman Claiborne Linville opposed. The motion carried 5-1 with Councilwoman Linville opposing. No second is required as this comes as a recommendation from committee. Is there any discussion?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
It is my understanding, and I don't know if this is true, that has the City of Pickens decided to withdraw their application?
I know that to be true. The mayor sent me a text.
Yes, members of council, I got an email this afternoon from C.C. Carter, the city administrator, saying for clarity, from the City of Pickens' point of view, they did not file the application because they have decided not to seek the funding from us.
So the City of Pickens is not filed an application. All right. I know that there was discussion over campaign and this, that, and the other throughout the entire conversation. Mr. Hendricks, do you have an update on any of the questions that were asked that night?
Yes, Chairman. I took the opportunity to research some of all accommodation tax and the method that how you can spend the money on accommodation tax is limited in what you can spend it on. And I wanted to make sure that council was following the law, of course. And also would like to address council on one other matter that came up since the count. The first thing is that there are two types of allocation funds. One is a state allocation fund, one is a local allocation fund. And I provided council members with the relevant law, which is the state allocation fund. And the state allocation fund, you will see in section 6.4.10 of the South Carolina Code, sets forth how you can spend those funds. And I didn't get into how you acquire those funds and what amounts of funds, but basically, the portion that all goes to the Department of Revenue, the state allocation fund, accommodation fund goes to the Department of Revenue, and then a portion of it is back for us to allocate. There's two things that we've got to do. We've got to follow the parameters, and in general, it has to be tourism-related expenditures. I've highlighted two different ones that would appear to be compliant with what the council voted to do as far as funding the event that happened at Pickens. And also, in addition to that, in section 6.4.25, we're required to have an advisory committee that sets out guidelines as to how we can spend money. We have that advisory committee, but one of the things that we have not complied with as of yet, and this is a technical thing, but its application must be reviewed by that advisory committee prior to any funds being dispersed. So the council wants to move forward on allocating tax funds towards that event to reimburse the county for the EMS and other expenditures that they had, to total about $30,000. It needs to go in front of that committee. Once that committee makes its recommendation, the council is free to act as it chooses. They can follow the recommendation of the committee or not. But it has to go before that committee. So I would suggest to council to delay it, file that application if you want to move forward with it, so that we dot I's and cross T's. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is I got a phone call from the state ethics commissioner asking how I was doing. I said, I'm fine, but why are you calling me? And she said that she saw our debate going on through the media and was interested because they believe it to be a case of first impression in South Carolina. And while she's not by any means trying to pressure you into seeking an advisory opinion, she made it clear to me that she would be glad to provide us an advisory opinion if the council chose to do that. She cited a couple of statutes. I read them real quick. I didn't write down what they were. And it was a fun conversation. But I honestly didn't think that they were applicable. But I wanted to make council aware of that. So we're going to have to go through the committee anyway. Their advisory opinion may be helpful not only to us, but to other municipalities and counties as political campaigns come through. But I wanted to inform council of that, to take care of that.
Thank you. Now, is that opinion something we need to formally request, or are they going to give that to us on their own?
We would have to request.
So I'd like to make a motion.
We can do that by resolution. We can do that by email. It's not difficult.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the motion to require the application for the $30,000 to go before the ATAX committee to reimburse the county, since the city is no longer requesting. If they choose to request, we've already stated that they need to fill out an application, and that we seek the opinion from the Ethics Commission on the allocation of accommodations tax to reimburse our emergency services cost on that day.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can we not just table the first consideration and then take up the second one? If we table it until that happens, then we don't have to bring it back.
Either way, we got to make them.
Motion for the first one and a separate motion for the second one.
Okay, so my motion will be for the application, I understand, application to the ATAX committee for the 30,000.
Table it until such time as it's gone through ATAC.
Tell you what, I'll let you make a motion. I'll withdraw my motion.
That would be my motion, then, to table it until it goes through the ATAX committee.
So I have a motion to table until the ATAX committee.
Second.
I have a second. Discussion on that motion
Just restate the motion again.
is to table the discussion until the application goes through the ATAX committee.
May I ask who's going to, would that be Mr. Roper who applies for the ATAX funding? Who submits to the county for county funding?
Mr. Roper,
Okay.
or his designee. Other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is, I could go either way on it, honestly. I mean, the police working that day, I think, would generate an extra $30,000 in expenses as they serviced the crowd in EMS. They were paid already. They were paid as part of their mid-July cycle. They've been paid. The issue is what pot of money to pay them out of. Do you pay them out of, the general fund, or do you pay them out of the ATAX account, which is the accommodations account, which is the surcharges that is charged on hotel guests? So tourists kind of pay that expense. My belief, and I think Mr. Roper's belief too, is that given those costs were generated servicing tourists, they should be paid for by revenue that tourists generated. I think that makes the most sense. But either way, they're going to be paid. And I would pay them either way. They've already been paid, so we could just do nothing and they'll be paid. So, but if you want to send it to the ATAX committee, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I was going to say, I agree, Councilman Sada, that we, in order to follow the rules that are set forth, it has to go before that committee. That committee makes a recommendation, and then we can say, like it, don't like it, whatever. But to me, this has nothing to do with the campaign, but only how are we going to save taxpayers money? Is it going to come out of the ATAX pot or out of the general fund pot? Because we incurred those additional costs. So, let's send it to the committee and get the report back, and then we can have that conversation.
I wholeheartedly agree. Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Linda.
I would like for the council to consider billing, instead of directing Mr. Roper to bill to ATAX, to send the invoice to the city of Pickens as a different direction of where he could send invoices. The city of Pickens posted on their Facebook page that they plan to be submitting an invoice to the campaign. So if the city of Pickens is sending an invoice to the campaign to be reimbursed, it seems to only make sense to me that the county's expenses should be billed to the city so that they can include that as part of their total invoice.
So is that a motion to amend the motion?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out, because, yes, it's a motion to amend the motion to instead, hold on, yes, to direct the invoice to the city of Pickens instead of to the ATAX committee.
So I have a motion to amend to bill the city of Pickens instead of the application for the ATAX committee. Do I have a second on that motion? All right. Don't hear a second on that motion. We'll continue with the original motion, which is to to table and complete the ATAX application. Other discussion there?
Can I just clarify, because I may have gotten lost in the conversation here. My understanding, this started talking about whether or not the Pickens application, and that they may or may not actually want it at this point.
They don't want it.
So, but we have something in motion, and we wouldn't approve it at tonight unless they actually applied for it, and then it would. And what I thought you said was that would have to go through the ATAX committee before we could approve it.
So the motion that came out of committee was to reimburse the county $30,000
From ATAX.
from ATAX,
Okay.
and reimburse the city of Pickens $10,000 once they completed their ATAX application.
Okay.
That's what came out of committee. Now, we've learned since then that the city of Pickens has not completed that application, and they do not intend, is our understanding, to complete that application. So the only money on the table from the motion coming out of the committee is for our own application for accommodations tax for $30,000.
Perfect, succinct, thank you.
Other discussion, clarification? Ms. Lovell.
Am I allowed to speak again? We recently went to a training for the South Carolina Association of Counties. Several members of this board were there. I was in level 1 training since I'm a new council member, and we went to the legal training, and which was talking about the legality of what you do on council. And the speaker said something that has stuck with me, which is precedent creates policy. What we do now creates a policy of how we will treat things in the future. If you take away whether or not this was a campaign, which I think is its own issue, and it's why we have a legal, we're getting legal representation or advice on this, it's an event that a municipality held that brought in a great expense. The municipality did not communicate with the county in advance, and the municipality was able to just expect that the county would rise to the occasion, which they did, and I'm grateful that we were able to provide that service. But the precedent being set here is that any municipality in our county can throw a large event without asking for permission and know that all expenses related to it will be covered. That is the precedent we're putting forth if we do not bill a municipality for their large event. I feel very confident if the city of Clemson decided to have a large speaker come in or a huge football event, and they did it and they didn't ask anybody, they didn't ask the county, and then it was absolutely huge, people would turn and say the city of Clemson should pay their bills. And I know this because the city of Clemson has done it in the past. They've had several events where they have contracted out to the county and to other municipalities to please cover their police and EMS expenses. We know that other municipalities have been good partners with the county and said, we have a major expense coming up, we are going to need to hire your EMS and your police to cover this event. That is the partnership that counties and cities have had. What we are saying with this outstanding event is that the city of Pickens owes nothing and the county is covering their event that they agreed to without consulting the county first. And I feel that taking politics out of it, taking campaigns out of it, which are important and we need to address from an ethical standard of where taxpayer money can go for a singular campaign, that issue aside, we are creating a new relationship between municipalities and counties, in my opinion.
Vice Chairman.
So I have a question. When the Azalea Festival happens, or the Senior League Series that we went to, do we work out contracts in advance for emergency services, or do we just cover it?
In the usual case, no. In the usual case, we would not.
We would not work out contracts
No, we
in
would
advance,
just know that that event was going on, and we would know that we needed to be prepared.
Chris?
And to your point, we were there wasn't a single county deputy, nor was there a single county emergency services vehicle at that championship game for the Senior League World Series on Saturday. Dr. Wilson.
What about football games at Clemson? There are sheriff's deputies and highway patrol folks and stuff like that at those.
We were just talking today, I was talking with some emergency services leadership today that we have in the past not billed or not had an agreement really in advance with the school district for football games. We've provided that service where they've wanted to. In certain circumstances, I think Easley has a contract with a private company where they do it, so they don't even ask. But otherwise, that's just something that's going on that night, and we make plans for it where we can.
And Clemson games.
Clemson games they will end up hiring a lot of our deputies off duty, but no, we just have normal operation plans that we enact when we have that many people in one place.
So Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Wilson.
Directing that money back to the ATAX fund is a consideration associated with the actual services that were rendered, and it seemed to fit, because it was a huge tourism event. I don't want to nickel and dime all of the municipalities and every other government entity every time there's an event. And to be honest with you, for the opportunity to showcase Pickens County and to get people paying attention to elections and to do all those things, I mean, nickel and diamond, guiding everybody over those expenses just seems like a real setback to the effort. And just more importantly, like, was it 10, 11% of the people turn out to vote? And so you get a whole stack of folks to come to this community and to go out there and stand in the streets. And not everybody loved Mr. Trump. A lot of folks went there that, you know, just wanted to see the spectacle of the entire event. But it brings so much positive attention to the idea of voting. I mean, there are whole subdivisions in my community where there's not a single reliable voter. Not just like, you know, not like shanty towns, like super nice subdivisions where there's not a single door that's worth knocking on because you don't know if they're going to show up to an election. I mean, we live in a world of absolute wonder, and people don't pay attention to the elections. So set aside the politics, sounds great to me. But the fact that we had this opportunity to get, Mr. Hall over there is doing his dead level best just to get people to show up to a precinct meeting, right? I mean, you guys need to have food. But at the end of the day, people are begging folks to show up just to talk about what's going on in their government. And we had an absolute world level event. I mean, it was an absolute pissant amount of money we had to spend to do that. Let's just move on from rinky-dinking this thing any further.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sada.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. The precedent has been in place for years. I mean, that's what we did. We followed the precedent. You know, if the city has the Azalea Festival and 100 people pass out, EMS actually services them. And we don't bill the Azalea Festival. The Azalea Festival is a nonprofit organization. If we billed them, they'd be wiped out. We don't bill any of these little festivals for extra police overtime or EMS, and that's the precedent. And we did the same thing with the Trump rally. If you start to charge the Trump rally, the new precedent would be you have to start to charge Dacresville Farm Days, and you have to start charging the Azalea Festival and the Haygood Mill when somebody passes out. And the county just absorbs those costs. But I thought the best thing in the whole thing was the opinion that the attorney gave, which was excellent. And it said, I'll just read a little bit of it. Political campaigns are not required to pay for government services incurred based on the events held by the campaign or by the government. The Federal Election Commission does not require campaigns to reimburse local government for services. Absent a contract, local governments incur the cost. There was no contract between the city of Pickens and the Trump campaign or the Secret Service. Basically, what the planners told me was Trump would pay for his flight, he'd pay for his car, he paid for the stage, and he paid for his staff. The Secret Service has to protect the president no matter what he's doing, if he's jumping out of planes or standing in front of 50,000 people. So the Secret Service paid for the metal gates, they paid for the metal detectors, they paid for the screeners, they paid for the security guards that were all around him up on top of everything. And the agreement was the city would pay for the cleanup, and the city would pay for the extra police, and we would pay for EMS and police. And Barry Crawford, who was one of the main planners, got on television, WSPA, and said, you know, Trump has left town and he owed no one anything. So I thought it was pretty clear. And when you look at all this 20 pages that the attorney wrote, quite often the localities, and I talked about the Democrat Party as having its campaign in 2024, in Chicago, the Chicago is going to pay for the police. They're going to pay for the EMS. They're going to pay for the rescue. It's not charged back to the Democrat Party. So I feel that if we sent him a bill now, it would be equivalent to a landlord saying, okay, move in, you pay rent, you pay utilities, and I'll pay for the lawn. A year later, the lease ends, and he's happy and leaving, and you send him a bill for the lawn. It's underhanded. And that's what it would be now, because none of that, of what you speak of, was agreed on by any of the planners.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Megan a question? Megan, in the minutes, is there anywhere in there when we had previous discussions about this, where anybody put forward a motion to get a contract to build back the Trump campaign or the city of Pickens? Did we have any discussions about anything like that?
Actually, we did in the committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah.
I made a motion to build a campaign to see if they'd help pay any expenses of $30,000 and $7,000 before allocating the ATAX money.
I meant prior to the event.
Okay.
When we could have actually gotten a contract with them.
Prior to the event. Okay.
Right. Was there any discussion like that whatsoever? In a motions-based organization, nobody passed that motion. Okay.
We had one discussion about it, and it was about the heat. That was the discussion. We were worried about the heat. But you know, you can go on further down the list. The Greenville News article, they come out and did great research. Currently, there's no federal or state laws about campaigns reimbursing cities for security purposes. Political campaigns are not required to pay government services for campaign events. Federal Election Commission has no guidelines or requirements related to campaigns utilizing local, et cetera. You can get a contract beforehand, but after the fact, when everybody's agreed, then to go back and say, by the way, you're going to pay this now when we didn't agree to it, it's not something I can support.
My confusion here lies, though, is the city of Pickens has now said they are sending an invoice to the Trump campaign. So why do they get to invoice the campaign and we don't?
Can I share some hearsay in regards to that, if you don't mind? So I spoke with Davey Hyatt, who was part of the the group that was organizing it, and I asked him specifically about the different costs and whatnot. And he said that they had to have a discussion about the different costs, and there were certain types of things that the city of Pickens would not, that the campaign wasn't going to pay for. The campaign bought, I guess, Dasani waters and had bottled water for the event. They paid for a series of other things. Mr. Seda is better educated on than I am. But there were some things like the Secret Service required 6 cameras that the city was going to keep, and that they weren't going to be able to build that back because it was a capital expense that the city was going to benefit from. And that there's discussion between our entity that represented our community, in working with the Trump campaign, was that stuff associated with life safety and policing the event would not be billed back. That was what David basically expressed to me in advance of it when I went to pick up my parking passes and whatnot. So it was, they had already had this discussion. So that opens the door for the city of Pickens to invoice back certain types of costs. Right? They've already had the discussion. They have an agreement. We didn't go participate in that to make sure we could shoulder in there and send these guys an invoice. So I mean, at the end of the day, as a business owner, I have a real hard time invoicing folks. When we stop by their place and see that there's a problem going on out there and we take care of it out of goodwill, I don't get to change my mind later on and say, you know what, I think I'm going to send them an invoice. I did work, that work was for free.
What did the city say they were going to bill him for?
Davey had our VIP tickets, and I went by to meet with him. I had the opportunity to talk with him briefly, and I just asked him those kind of questions, whatnot. So whatever day it was, Davey sent us the text that we could come get our stuff. And Davey seemed pretty cognizant of the facts of the situation, because I think he participated in the discussion.
I will say I want to kind of change the thought, the direction, because it sounds like it's we agreed, and now we're recanting. I think to your point that you were making earlier, Dr. Wilson, is we really didn't have a high level of discussion around even the funding, because it just felt like it was one of those things. Mr. Roper, you correct me if I'm wrong, we really didn't have a seat at the table until the event was pretty much planned and done. It's a huge kudos to our emergency services personnel, our leadership, that stepped up and says, okay, it's going to be 100 degrees. We're talking about high noon on Main Street, the demographic of the population that will be present, the associated risk involved with that demographic at that time of day with the heat. And our emergency services folks stepped up and said, okay, we need to have this, this, and this, and we need to be prepared for this, this, and this. So we prepared, we pre-planned, and we assumed up front that we were going to have to eat the cost of this event. We didn't have to do any of that, and we could have waited for the 911 calls to come in, which they would have, and it sounds crazy for me to say it that way, but we have had events after Clemson football games where floors in houses have collapsed, and the same level of response took place with a different agency in a different part of the county, and we had the same number, maybe not the exact same number of people on scene, but probably pretty close, and it was a long, drawn-out rescue, blah, blah, blah. We didn't bill anybody for that except the people that we actually transported. And so all we're looking at doing here is using tourism dollars to reimburse ourselves for taking care of tourists. Mr. Trump had his own ambulance with him. If you saw the motorcade, it was a Greenville County ambulance. Picked him up at GSP and stayed in the caravan until they got back to GSP. Our crews had nothing to do with that caravan or that political figure. And I just want to paint that picture the way that I see it. And it's that our EMS folks, our emergency services folks, stepped up and said, okay, we need to plan for this so we're proactive and not reactive. And we, kind of after the fact, says, you know what, that was a lot of tourists. Let's use tourism dollars to reimburse ourselves so that we can use our general fund money for other non-touristy things. That's my take on the entire situation. And just since we talked, I figured I'd put my 2 cents in. Any other conversation or discussion? The motion on the table is for the county to apply for the ATAX funding for $30,000.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Lawless.
one quick comment.
Yes, sir.
I do agree with your line of thinking on that, but irregardless, it needs to go to the committee, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then, the Ethics Commission part of it, that's voluntary. If there's a question, though, my feeling is we should get an opinion. If it's not gonna cost us anything.
The council's already asked me to do that, and I'll be getting that opinion.
Okay.
And I will impress upon them that we're doing our application, and we would certainly like their opinion. If they are voluntarily giving us an opinion, we would like one quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And what are they going to give an opinion on? How the state agency can enforce a federal law with a federal candidate?
Well, I think the federal law is outside the purview of the State Ethics Commission, so I don't think they're going to talk about federal law, but I think what I would be hoping that they would do is provide a procedure to prevent exactly what's happening here when you have political campaigns that come in and tie into events that cities are having to celebrate the 4th of July. How do you divide the cost of that? And I hope that they give us some guidance to that.
And it's going to be based on state law?
On state law in South Carolina, yes.
Okay. All right. You said she sent you 2 state laws. I'd like to see those.
Yeah, I will find out exactly what the state statutes that they're looking at. The ones that she mentioned on the phone, I looked up afterwards, and they didn't seem applicable. So,
I agree.
I'm certain that they are going to be. Their opinion will be applicable law.
Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please, with the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. All right, so now we're back to the motion as amended coming out of committee. Any discussion on that? I'm proud of myself for catching that.
Could you clarify? Or could you restate it?
So the motion as amended is that the county will apply for ATAX funding. We're going to table until the county applies for ATAX funding and it goes before the ATAX committee. So it's everything in this, which is if the city of Pickens decides to put in their application for $7,000, we put in our application for $30,000, it goes before committee and has to come back out. We are willing to reimburse up to $30,000. That is the amended motion on the motion coming out of committee. Does that make sense?
I don't understand how we can vote to fund it if we just voted to have an advisory committee review it first.
The same way we did coming out of committee. It was, the original motion was the $7,000 and $30,000, and then it was amended to have it go before the application to be completed and go to ATAX committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
We're not voting to fund it. We're voting to send it to the ATAX committee.
I thought that's what we just did in the amendment.
No, that was just to amend what's coming out of committee, because it originally had Pickens and the 30. So we set it to, we're just talking about us now. And so that's what the amended part is. Now we're sending it to ATAX. And then we can have a debate afterwards when they come back with their recommendation.
Thank you. Other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Log number 141 UDSO, there was no action taken by the committee. Log number 215, council rules. Councilman Claiborne Linville made a motion to amend the bylaws to allow alternative attendance. Councilman Wilson seconded the motion. The motion carried 4-2 with Councilman Seda and Councilman Lawless opposed. The vice chairman made a motion to remove the following rule. This isn't all one lump, is it?
Vice Chairman Costner deleted or removed the sentence, but then he removed the paragraph, so it was 2 separate motions.
So the original motion, 215 rules, I guess I have a parliamentary question, and it's whether or not we're going to vote. Do we vote on each of these individually, or since they're all related to council rule and their log number 215, is it a cooperative?
I think it can be one motion because it was all about one paragraph
So I understand that, but the first one was on the alternative attendance? Right.
Yes, so we just said that, and then there was two other motions. Vice Chairman Costner reviewed the minutes, then they also conserved more than two consecutive.
Correct. So my question is it one vote on log number 215, or is it the alternative attendance a vote and then a vote on the other?
The attendance would be like in the rule for succession.
Two separate votes. So I don't need a motion or a second as it comes out of committee for the alternate attendance discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Seda.
So you're going to vote that rule as just one vote? No. Was it two? Was it two or one?
So the alternative attendance will be a vote on its own. And then striking and removing. That was the parliamentary question that I did have.
So this right now is for the alternative attendance?
That is correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I had nothing to say about that.
Any other discussion on alternative attendance? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Vice Chair Costner did make a motion to remove the following rule, 2.1, Section D. No officer can serve more than 2 consecutive 2-year terms in a particular office. The motion was seconded by Councilman Wilson, and it carried 5-1 with Councilman Seda opposed. But then Councilman Wilson made a motion to eliminate Section D in Rule 2.1. That motion was seconded by the Vice Chair. I made the amendment to the motion to make the language for all 3 positions to be in the events of their vacancy, the position will be replaced by an election of council. Motion was seconded by Councilwoman Linville and carried 5-1 with Councilman Seda opposed. The original motion carried 5-1 with Councilman Seda opposed. I don't need a motion or a second as this comes out of committee. Discussion on this.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Seda.
I want to explain why I'm going to vote against this. Right now, there's a term limit on officers on this council. So the chairman of the county council can serve only 4 consecutive years. Then someone else will have to do it. So the vice chairman can serve 4 consecutive years, and then someone else has to do it. The purpose of this vote is to eliminate that term limit. I support term limits, so I'm going to be voting no, and I want to explain why for 2 reasons. You know, when you're the chairman, you have this very limited formal power. You can run meetings, you can call meetings, you sign documents. But there's this very large informal power that you have. Mainly people or the staff will realize that you're in charge and they treat you differently. This is from my own experience when I was a chairman of the school board. I saw that. And I was also a regular trustee. There's a real difference. And as a chairman, you have more influence than other people. And what happens is that informal authority grows over time. And the longer you serve, the more people think you're going to remain in charge and more that informal power grows. Term limits put that informal power into check. And I think this term limit should not be eliminated for that reason. The second reason is I believe the power needs to be spread out amongst the council. I really believe that. So I like this, that we had automatic succession in there. So if a chairman resigned, the vice chair automatically moved up, and then the vice chairman, the pro tem moved up to the vice chairman. So people at the bottom had this ability to move up. That's going to be removed as well. So I really oppose that. And by the way, it's the same reason I oppose the committee of the whole, because it consolidates authority just in one person. Where when you have individual committees, each councilman has his own committee, has the ability to call meetings and request information. It spreads that information, that power out. And that's generally my philosophy. And there's 2 things here that is consolidating power, and I don't support that.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Seda, I disagree with you completely. This isn't the school board. There is no perceived power. And I served as chairman, and I had no more power than anybody else on council. It's very clear, and that's really why I wanted to get this changed to the way it reads now, because I don't want there to be any perception of power for the chairman. The chairman basically is the person who speaks for full council after they vote. They're not to go out and, when the press is here, and go, hey, here's what we're going to do. It's got to be, you know what, here's what council voted for, whether you agreed with it or you disagree with it. Yes, there is the the ability to set up the meetings, but the checks and balances already happens. There's no hierarchy or ability to move up because every 2 years we vote on a whole new slate. So someone who's never served as chairman but has had the experience over the past 2-4 years, whatever they've done, has the ability to be elected as chairman. Every 2 years there's the potential for a new council. So I don't believe that this should be a governing body that takes turns. It's all about communication and transparency, and it's not about term limits. And I don't want to set the perception that somehow the chairman has all of this unintended power.
Other discussion? Dr. Wilson.
We have 4 seats up for election next time. Right now, you're the chairman while we're talking about spending $10 million on emergency services, communication systems, where you clearly have, an immense level of experience in comparison to any of the rest of us. We've had a number of discussions that fit in, like about the fire, about all sorts of other things where you're serving as chairman and helping to guide those discussions and sort of bring folks in is a clear opportunity. We have 4 seats that flip, and you've got 2 more people come in, and you can't serve. Only the folks that recently were here can serve. That creates an undue complication, and anybody can pass or propose a motion to suspend a rule. But like Mr. Trotter just said, the idea that the chairman has more power than the rest of us or whatnot isn't the case. In my mind, I feel like you have less power as the chairman because I can speak for the people in my district and I can share my mind and I can say why I don't like an idea. But when you're serving as the chairman, even if you voted against it and it passes, you have to stand up and go be the leader in the community and propose that and push that and honestly step up for the folks in the administration that have to take those issues and put them forward. So you can't be nearly as advocating and biased in your advocation as you can if you're not the chairman. So I don't like the role, but I don't see it being more powerful. I just see it being more constrained in some ways because you got to represent all of us as a voice. So to me, the rule was unnecessary. I supported it when we made that change when I first got on the board. You're right, it's not the school board. And on the school board, talking about term limits, I got on the school board with a list of things I was going to do, and I thought it would take 10 years. It took 4 years. Well, it took 3.5 years. And I had a clear mandate when I won the first time, and I could have easily become reelected, but I had already done the job that I had told folks that I would do, and there wasn't a mission for me on the school board because of the way the school board had changed. So the term limit was I got my job done and I moved on, and somebody came into the role that could fit that role better at that time for the school district. If you're the chairman and you're not right for it, the rest of us got to kick you out of it. There's no way for you to prevent it. We come into the meeting that night, the lawyer takes over the meeting, and then you get booted. It's pretty straightforward. We don't need a bunch of complicated rules. The rules clearly when we first came on, I understood the concept that Mr. Seda put forward when we first came on, and I was supportive of it, but as I've been on the council here, I've recognized the significant differences this entity has from the school district. And at the school district, I think it probably would be a pretty good idea. But the school district already moves people from chairman to chairman in a pretty continuous basis. So it's unnecessary, and I support making the change.
Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. And that completes our committee report. Item 6 on tonight's agenda is council correspondence. The committee of the whole meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 21st at 6 o'clock in the main conference room. County offices will be closed on Monday, September 5th for the Labor Day holiday. Due to the Labor Day holiday falling on the first Monday of the month, the next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 5th at 6:30 in the council chambers of the admin building. And that can't be right. So September 4th is Labor Day. Okay, let me back up. County offices will be closed September 4th for Labor Day, but we will meet here on September 5th. Boards and commissions, an information table is set up in the lobby this evening with more information about current vacancies and upcoming openings on the Pickens County boards and commissions. If you're interested in serving on a board, please stop by the table and please see the clerk to council, Ms. Nations, for more information. Are there any other correspondence that need to be announced tonight? Hearing none. Motion period, new business. This is our time. Does any member of council have a motion or new business for this evening? Hearing none. Item number 8, which is ordinances for first reading and/or resolutions. Consideration of a resolution declaring August 23rd as C. David Stone Day here in Pickens County. Do I have a motion and a second to constitute this resolution? Motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second by Councilman Lawless. Discussion. Hearing none,
Well, I just wanted to clarify, is this, Mr. Roper, is this the day that, there's a reason that there's a significance for this day, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
This is the day that we'll have the dedication ceremony.
Okay.
So if you don't mind.
Dr. Wilson.
So Sheriff Stone's, Carl's not here, so I just want to put this forward. Sheriff Stone's not here. I mean, the Sheriff Stone's not here, but Carl's not here to say this. So I'm just going to kind of put it in my own terms here. Sheriff's deputies came to Sliding Rock one time looking for future customers, and my cousins and I had been up there so long, we'd sled down the rocks so long that our shorts had basically wore out in the butt and we were running around naked. And so the sheriff's deputies came over and said, which one of you ladies owned these kids? And they said they had a camp put together for kids just like that. And clearly after I went, it was for future customers. Sheriff Stone was a huge piece of organizing that. Dewey and all the other guys, I got to ride in a cop car in the front seat, which was kind of nice. They fed us, they clothed us, they hung out with us. It was community policing at its finest before community policing. Chief Holcomb in Easley was part of it. And we built personal relationships. When he was on his deathbed with leukemia, I got to go thank him for this experience because it led to me being engaged in the community in a similar way. And I got the opportunity to say to David Stone that, outside of all the other things that he had done that I was pretty thankful for, that one seminal experience of mine that they put together was not required. It was all volunteer. They all take their time and time of their money. They had to all pitch together and put their dollars in a pot to take us swimming up there at Table Rock, which, by the way, the county probably gave them some free tickets, if you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, it's not just being a cop for 43 years. It's individual people that can all tell a story just as similar to mine in the way that they kind of changed the path that you're on. Because they were clearly looking for future customers and ID'd us right out of the gate. And so I just want to say, I think that recognizing David Stone in this fashion is just huge. Because, 43 years, good Lord, think about the lives. So, Carl's not here, so I think that somebody should say, there's a good reason for this.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Item B, first reading in title only of ordinance number 627, authorizing and approving the development of a joint county industrial and business park pursuant to section 4-1-170 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina 1976 as amended in conjunction with Oconee County, the park, such park to be geographically located in Oconee County, the execution and delivery of a written park agreement with Oconee County as to the requirement of payments of fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes with respect to the park property and the sharing of the revenues and expenses of the park, the distribution of revenues from the park within Pickens County, and other matters related thereto. I ask for a motion and a second to consider all this ordinance. First reading in title only.
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Wilson. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Item 9 on tonight's agenda is ordinances for second reading, and we have none. Item 10 on tonight's agenda is ordinances for third reading. Third reading of ordinance number 625 regarding amendments to Chapter 6 of the Pickens County Code of Ordinances specific to the operations of the Pickens County Airport and matters related thereto. Do I have a motion and a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Lawless. Mr. Roper, I know we've had a lot of discussion around this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I know we got the first reading, the second reading done. Basically, the change that's happening to the ordinance, and you'll see the writing there in the documentation you have, is that normally takeoffs and landings are not allowed except in an emergency, except on the runway. Well, we've had an applicant that has petitioned us and then appealed up through the FAA, and we have gone along that appeal process. I've got Director Salinas here tonight if there's any specific questions. to try to exempt ultralight aircraft from that requirement in our county ordinance. This is something that we didn't take lightly. We felt was not safe the way it was suggested. And so you know that this has been on the agenda a couple of times, and in both instances we've said, please pull it back, because we knew we had further appeals. Director Salinas is basically of the opinion and has briefed me that we don't really have any more appeals. We've appealed this as far as we can. The danger here is that if we, I'm searching for the right word, if we tell the FAA no, we're not going to do what you told us to do, we jeopardize the funding that has supported that airport and is currently expanding that airport now. That type of funding in the future would be jeopardized. The petitioner's been adamant. One thing that we do put in this language, you will see, is that provided, however, takeoffs and landings of ultralight vehicles shall not be subject to this requirement and shall instead be governed by any and all regulations as may be promulgated pursuant to the authority of Section 6-77. In other words, Director Salinas will be able to create regulations to make this as safe as possible on our facility. So we would ask for you to give third reading, knowing that we've done everything we could to make our position clear with the FAA, but not willing to jeopardize our future funding for this important county facility.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Motion carries. Item 10, B, public hearing and third reading of ordinance number 626 to provide for the issuance and sale of not exceeding $12,750,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligations bonds of Pickens County, South Carolina, to prescribe the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended, to provide for the payment thereof, and to provide for other matters related thereto. I will open this up to public hearing for this third reading. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Hearing no one, I'll close this from public hearing. I'll ask for a motion and a second to constitute third reading of this ordinance. I have a motion by Dr. Wilson. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Lawless. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sato.
I voted against this project from the start, and I want to fully explain why. Most importantly, I don't see widening of 183 as the number one need in the county. I stated that earlier on. I felt the most important need when it comes to road is Highway 123 in Clemson, called Restaurant Row. The second priority is Highway 8 coming out of Anderson up to 135. I think that needs to be widened more importantly than 183. Where are the houses being built was the first question I asked. And when you look at this map, it shows you where the subdivisions are going. And on this map alone, 1,622 houses are being built around that section of Highway 8. 0 houses are being built around 183 on this map. Highway 8 and 183 are about neck and neck when it comes to traffic counts, but in 5 years, I think when all these houses are done and much more, I think there's going to be a V8 moment when most realize that Highway 8 should have been widened before Highway 183. The second thing is, I also disputed how dangerous Highway 183 is, and I want to review that. The data doesn't support that Highway 183 is the most dangerous road in the state, or the upstate, or even in the county. And I've heard that over the years repeated again and again. None of that's true. Like I said in the first reading, when you look at the South Carolina Department of Public Safety data, Highway 123 in Pickens County had 22 deaths in 5 years. Highway 183 had less than half of that at 9 deaths. A rebuttal that I heard when I made that comment was that I was cherry picking the data, only focusing on deaths, and injuries were important too. Well, I didn't have that data. Councilman Linville had that data. And I looked at it and I examined it and studied it. It actually confirmed my point. When you focus on deaths, incapacitating injuries, and non-incapacitating injuries, Highway 183 was not the most dangerous road in Pickens County. Highway 123 had 83 deaths and injuries over that 5-year period. Then clustered in a distant second is Highway 183 with 47 deaths and injuries. Highway 93 with 46 deaths and injuries. Highway 8 had 44 deaths and injuries. So 123, again, when you look at injuries, is the most dangerous road. And by the way, I think widening 183, from Greenville to Highway 135, I think is going to usher in a wave of growth in the northern part of the county and putting stress on the environment up there, which we aim to protect, and the wildlife up there. And I oppose the stress that this is going to put into the northern part of the county. I think people are upset with all the growth, and this decision is just going to make it worse. So I thought Highway 8 was a better choice for those reasons. As an alternative, if this project is not approved by the state, I would like the leadership and the rest of the council to then look at widening Highway 8 coming out of Anderson County.
Dr. Wilson.
I think we pretty much clarified this last time, Mr. Seda, that Highway 183 is not in competition with those efforts, that it's not going to stall or take away a single dollar of opportunity or stretch out the time associated with those. Matter of fact, Senator Rice and Representative Collins are moving forward with a study on 8 that was requested by the city at the area there where there's the most complication associated with traffic. They're already doing it. It's got nothing to do with 183. And then when I talked with Rex has been trying to work on 183 for 2 decades, since he was in the House. And he's been working on that project. There was a proposal in 2008 or 9 where they were going to extend 153, et cetera, because it's pretty common knowledge that it's a dangerous road. And yeah, you're cherry picking the way that you represent the information here, because 123 has 10 times the traffic. So if I have more deaths and accidents for the amount of traffic that I have, 95 has more traffic. But if you compare 183 to 95 for the amount of distance that it has, the statistics are higher. Your chance of getting hurt on 183 are higher. And more important than that, and you can shake your head and make faces, more important than that, if you talk to all of the EMS folks in our county, where's the place where you see the worst wrecks? Where's the place that we need to focus on? Where's the place we need to fix for the sake of our neighbors? Every one of them will disagree with you, Mr. Seda. Every single one of them will. Because I know I've stood out there on that road. I've been to the picnics, and I've been to the barbecues, and I manned the grill. And I talked to the folks about that road, and that's a deadly road. It's dangerous. It changes lives. So the idea that you're going to be against it is your one vote, but thank God you only have one vote. Sadly, it's for folks in Pickens. They'll have to travel that road quite often. I hope that the folks in Pickens remember this at election time. Because ultimately, we have a chance to fix something that's completely broken. It's going to cost the county $200,000 a year. Everybody knows that road's deadly. He knows the road's deadly. I didn't just whoop the pants off the boys that he was supporting in the election against me because I was doing anything other than supporting fixing that road. I've never talked to anybody but him and his friends that said that the road didn't need to be fixed. So the disingenuous rhetoric associated with this is a disservice to the community and to the folks that we both represent. The road needs to be fixed. Everybody knows the road needs to be fixed. And again, we talk to God and everybody. We talk to the DOT. Fixing this road's not going to hurt us anywhere else. Talk to Rex, talk to Davey, talk to Neil, talk to Dwayne, who's putting the money in from the CTC. Talk to just 2 regular old folks that just live on the road, right across the street from multiple crosses that represent the deaths that happen right in front of their house. Ultimately, everybody in the county knows that road needs to be fixed, except for one guy. So vote against it, please, because the road needs to be fixed. If you lived on that road or you spent any time on that road, you absolutely know, just from the seat of your pants all the way up to the white knuckles that you have going around some of those curves or coming up over some of those hills facing into the sun, the road needs to be fixed. It's such a straightforward and clear project. People have been trying to do it for 2 decades, except for one guy.
Vice Chairman.
And Dr. Wilson, you bring up an interesting point. So this isn't a decision that we can say, oh, where can we spend money on whatever road we want to choose? This is a project specific to 183. And it's something that, as you mentioned, Senator Rice and several have been working on for years. I disagree with the concept it's going to encourage growth. I believe that it's going to help alleviate some of the congestion that we are seeing on 123 and we are seeing on some of all those side roads. I mean, every time I put into Waze how I'm going to get to Greenville, it takes me a different way now because 123 is slammed and I'm going through all these back roads with all these other people using Waze to go through all these back roads. I know that 183 is when I'm coming from Greenville to this end of the county from work today, I came down 183. And thank God you guys got all the trees taken care of because there were a lot in the way. And how horrible would that have been for there to be that kind of an accident because of those storms. So I think it's going to alleviate some of the congestion. We don't have a choice is saying, hey, can we get this money from the State Infrastructure Bank and let's put it towards something else? We have ACOG money for some of the rural roads. You've got GPATs. There are a lot of entities that are working with the county on taking care of some of these other roads. Where I will agree is, yeah, we got to do something with Highway 8. And yeah, we probably need to look at 123, especially as it goes down towards Clemson. But those are completely separate projects with separate opportunities for funding in separate locations. This is one opportunity with one project through the State Infrastructure Bank, which we've never gotten the money and have applied multiple times because always that money, which is our money, it's money that's been collected and put into the State Infrastructure Bank in Columbia, and those projects are always like Highway 95, Charleston, we got to build that bridge. It's always going towards the lower part of the state. Now we got a chance to get some of that money back at a fraction of the cost for us to do it. It's extraordinary and remarkable, and I think we'd be foolish not to take advantage of it.
So Mr. Chairman, for what he said just a second ago, GPATs, the Greenville, Pickens, Anderson Transportation, subcommittee or whatnot, study. You know, those folks are all on board that it's a dangerous road and needs to be fixed. And they've been coaching us for a significant period of time about what we're going to have to do to get the qualifying points you need to be competitive against the projects he's talking about, like stuff down in Charleston where they can do more than a match, right? We're talking about a percentage match. So we can fix a road for $200,000, $200,000 of county money, right? Over the next 20 years, we'll fix that road because of the pots of money that are coming to play because it's the kind of project that needs to be done at a large scale. Highway 8, that project, that's going to take 7 or 10 years. They're going to have to fight for that too, just like anybody else had to get these points. It's not going to hold this project back. This project needs to be done. So GPATs, DOT, the county CTC committee, all of our delegation, every single member of our delegation, 5 of us, folks from cities, I mean, you name it, all these meetings that we've gone to get this thing done, unanimous, continuously express support to fix this road, except for one guy. So I think it's an easy one to vote for.
Other discussion?
Chairman.
Ms. Linville.
I completely agree with Mr. Seda that 123 is an incredible problem. And I, especially as a person living in Clemson on that restaurant row, it is awful. And one of the first calls I made upon being elected was calling GPATs to figure out where 123 was. It is, from the research I've done, the 183 funds that we are about to be given are coming from the State Infrastructure Bank. That money was applied for originally back in 2017. So this is that money moving forward and finally becoming a project. Nothing was submitted in 2017 for Highway 123. So while I agree with your argument there, it wasn't done back in 2017. So at this point, to get 123 done, we need to focus more on what I was calling GPATS money, but Clemson is about to get moved into ANATS, the Anderson Group. I have been assured that with strong voices, of which I plan to be one, 123 will be the #1 focus of the new ANATS, as long as we can make sure that Anderson is still as interested in Clemson as I would like them to be. So I appreciate and have learned so much on this council about how many things can be happening at once and how long it takes for them to happen. I will be voting for 183 because people back in 2017 put all their time and energy into this, and it is finally coming to fruition with money from the State Infrastructure Bank. And then I look forward to working with Mr. Seda and everybody else for ANATS money to start focusing on 123 as soon as we are moved into there in October.
Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Sada.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson referred to me many times in quite derogatory ways, so I want to respond to that. It's not a top priority, in my opinion. It was not my first choice. They're all dangerous roads. People dying and getting injured make it a dangerous road. But if this was Highway, I can tell you right now that Highway 183 will be worked on before Highway 8 because of this choice that was made. That's all I was saying. I would have done Highway 8 first. For many years, people have said, including Mr. Wilson, that Highway 183 was the most dangerous road. Over and over. And the data should support that. It's not about talking to this person, or I saw this, or anybody can come up with that. That supports nothing, in my opinion. You actually have to look at data. And the data should support this if it's so overwhelmingly what I've heard for years. And it simply doesn't. The data doesn't support it. So a lot of those claims were misleading, and I didn't want to be misled by them. The data I looked at didn't come from me. Actually, Councilwoman Linville gave me the data. I looked at it. And like I said, when you looked at the last 5 years, 123 had much more injuries and deaths, twice that of Highway 8, Highway 183, and Highway 93. It was about half. Like I said, all the roads I think are dangerous, but when it had to be a priority or choice, I thought 8 was a more of a choice. And I think in time, when 183 is worked on and Highway 8 isn't, which will be a few years from now, I think there'll be regret because there's a lot of houses being built down there in Easley. Vice Chairman.
My only rebuttal to that is my data supports that the value of a human life isn't reduced to data. And those people that were hurt and those people that were injured on 183 deserve as much of our attention as they do on 123 and 8. And as far as priorities go, I mean, at the time, and it goes even back before we came on to council, this is even before 2017, this was one of those things that they were working on because there were multiple factors that were involved. So I worry when we start talking about, well, there were only this many deaths, there were only this many people hurt, and I'm just, thank God it wasn't somebody in my family that was hurt or that lost their life on 183. And if we have the opportunity to correct 183, 123, and Highway 8, man, I'm going to go full bore to doing that, to support what you want to do, to support what they want to do in Easley. This is an individual project that we can't choose on where we put the priority. This is a project that was put forward years ago, and we now have an opportunity to take advantage of it and to vote against it because it isn't our top priority today when we can take care of it now. It just seems very short-sighted.
Mr. Chairman.
I actually want to, if you don't mind real quick, I want to tag on to what you said. If it were up to me, this nice young lady, thank you for being here tonight, senior in high school, she brought up a great point that has driven me absolutely crazy. Since we put the high school at the county line, makes zero sense to me, on a 2-lane road, made no sense to me. We didn't do that, but school board at the time did that. Drove me crazy, has driven me crazy. If it were up to me, that'd be a 4-lane road with sidewalks down either side. When you go up Sheriff Mill Road, you'd have sidewalks there too, because guess what? They're needed there. If it were up to me, I would say, let's not do the 183 project, and I would be advocating for that. Here's the deal. We turned down this SIB application, and we turned down SIB money. That money will not be spent in Pickens County. That money will go Charleston, Columbia, somewhere else. It will not be spent in Pickens County. And that's ultimately what we're talking about tonight is state infrastructure bank money being spent in Pickens County. It is the only option on the table. All of these others are great points. It's not my first choice, even though I've driven 183 probably as many times, probably more than everybody but Henry, in all honesty, because I used to live right off of 183. I know the road like the back of my hand, and I know where you don't want to be when the sun's coming up and where you don't want to be when the sun's coming down, or when it's raining hard, or when it's after 10 o'clock at night. I know all the spots, but it still would not be, because ultimately, this nice young lady made a great point earlier, but that's not on the table. The only option on the table is the one that's on the table, and that's 183. I think it's important to remember that. Dr. Wilson, thank you for entertaining me to go off the rails there.
So when they built the schools down there, when they built Easley High School in Anderson County, basically, we talked to them about the 2-lane road. Do something about it, please. On the school board, everything we could do to get them to do sidewalks, right? It's a train wreck. The thing is, when I was having that discussion on the school board, I was also trying to get 183 fixed, and I did about 500 other things because you can do more than one thing at a time. It's amazing, honestly, particularly in government, because we're going to have a lot of stuff going on. This project needs to be done. And if you look at just two contrasting elements here, the average speed on 123 is significantly higher than on 183. The daily throughput of traffic on 123 versus 183 significantly larger. The driven miles on 123 versus 183 just significantly higher potential for an accident on 123 than on 183, just because of just the basic numbers of it. But those numbers aren't just explosively different. 183 is a pretty strong contender in those numbers. It's a dangerous road. Everybody knows it's a dangerous road. Everybody I know from Pickens, which I don't represent, that I've talked with, pretty clearly understands it's a dangerous road. It's not, you can look at the numbers any way you want to, but when you start dividing out all of those other statistics into the actual incident rate, it's a very high competitive incident rate. But the wonderful part of it is, hopefully, we're about to vote this thing and move forward with it, hopefully, and then it'll be up to the delegation to work out the SIB facts for the rest of us and make this thing move forward. And then hopefully we'll be able to do something on Highway 8 and 123 and some of the other more dangerous roads in the county as well, because it's not just this one project. This is just one of many places that need attention. And again, just to be clear, working on this project doesn't set back, impede, or take away from any other road project that we could be doing in the county in any possible way. But if we're just going to make up other places where we want to spend stuff, I mean, what about cancer surgeries? I'd really like to cure cancer too. That's not on the table right now. Fixing 183 is on the table. So I appreciate you helping me with this, because this is just important. And it affects 2/3 of my district and probably 60% of the Pickens district and the rest of the community as a whole. So at the end of the day, it's just something that's worthy and needs to be done.
Other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 11 on tonight's agenda is other requested agenda items, and I have proposed updates to Katichi Point Park and source of available funding. Mr. Roper, would you care to fill us in a little further on number 11?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. This is an opportunity that came up in the information you have in front of you were the proposed improvements to Katichi Point. And to orient you, Katichi Point, right across the road from what, when I was a boy, was called Katichi Beach, but it's been a place that people have gone for many years to recreate there on the river. Just north of Norris, just east of central, the country out there, the Katichi Mill Village, rural to growing, but with people of limited means in many cases. So this is a perfectly well-situated park. It was built with money that was accumulated through the PCB settlements. PCB settlements from the Schlumberger Corporation that put PCB chemicals into that river, and so this is one of the ways that they were required to help mitigate those harms. So it was built with that funding. We got notification that we were receiving more funding for that, more funding from the PCB settlement, basically $27,000 that had percolated through the system through several years. And so the logical thing for us to do is to come and say that needs to go back to those PCB funded parks. We had things we wanted to do, and we thought at the price points that we could get them, if we could do some landscaping, put some grills, some picnic tables, some decorative fencing, a camera system out there so that we can make sure we're having good behavior where possible. And then the big ticket item is to put a play structure out there so that the families and the children in that community that again is of in many instances limited means will have a location that they could go and have birthday parties and go get the ice cream and go for the special treat out there at Katichi Park. So we really think it'll be good. The funding is the PCB money, and then the other part is the local accommodations tax, which has got very limited rules compared to the state accommodations tax we've been talking about. So we've got the money available for both. There's only one thing I want to make clear, and that is the first page that you have, the one that says proposal for Katichi Point that looks like this. It has a bullet list of things we want to do. 3 of them are not funded by this request, and I just want to make that clear. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. This does not fund the gate system, which is the 4th bullet point down. It does not remove the graffiti under the bridge because basically that'll cost some money, but we'll also have to get some permission from the Army Corps and things like that to do that. And it doesn't build a restroom building. We'll continue looking for mechanisms to accomplish those. I just want to be clear that it accomplishes the other goals on the sheet, and we would ask for council to approve the expenditures of those funds.
If you don't mind. What do you mean by gate system? What are you talking about? Just a steel gate?
We would like to have a card access gate system or something that perhaps at some point we could charge a portion of that for parking, but we're not ready to propose that yet.
Okay. And how much does something like that generally cost?
I don't have a cost estimate on that, and I almost gave you one because we just partnered with Clemson a couple of years back, and we paid for their gate system at the park they just took over, which is 12 Mile, the 12 Mile Park, which is further down 12 Mile. I want to say that was a $15,000 project, but I don't recall.
All right, so I'll ask for a motion that we support this funding request ask
moved.
tonight. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Lawless. Discussion.
Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
No, I just have a quick question. How much money is in the local accommodations funding that we have available to us?
I don't have that number in front of me. I apologize, but it's significantly more than this amount. This will not exhaust it or even come close.
But it doesn't operate by the same rules as we were looking at from this other sheet?
It's much more permissive on our end, yes.
Ms. Linville.
Two things. First, my question is how much money is left in class action funding? I had heard from rumor that we used the last of it in the last dam removal.
Well, so we thought we had. This was a small amount that came through later.
Great.
We were surprised that we received this additional funding. So our logical thought is it needs to go back to that park. But.
Okay. This park, if y'all have not been, to me is one of the new gems of Pickens County. It improved my quality of life during COVID because my kids could go there and you can get directly in the water in clean, beautiful, there's rapids there, you can float there. Strangely, Lake Hartwell does not have a lot of access points for a lot of people. Sometimes you want to go swimming or rafting, it's hard to figure out where to go and where to park your one truck on the side of the road. This is a beautiful place to enter a river that's now available thanks to this class action funding. So I just want to commend the county. In just a couple years, you created a beautiful park. So I think making it better, especially in that part of the county that doesn't have a lot of that access, I support this fully.
Councilman Lawless.
Mr. Roper, do we have any estimated numbers, how many people are using that facility?
No, we don't. We don't have a good way to track that because it's back in the woods a little bit, and we do occasionally get complaints of bad behavior down there, and when we go by, because our Mile Creek staff basically is tasked with going by there, and I think they go by twice a week to gather garbage and everything. We see evidence of people using it.
Yeah.
The challenge for this is we fix this up more and more is to, I guess this won't be the right word, but to program things down there, to have events down there so we can start gathering that kind of information. We know it's a great big piece of property. It's a great facility. We just got to figure out a way to make people aware. So I thank you for that, Councilman Linville, and also to keep building it up.
As far as camera systems, what are you looking at? I mean,
well, like I said,
somebody's going to be monitoring these cameras, or just like?
It would be more in the nature of game cameras. What we have that happens down there, when I say bad behavior, is we have people set up tents and just start staying down there, and so if we knew that a day or two in advance, it would be a lot better than them having been down there for 3 days, that sort of thing.
There's also worse behavior happens there.
That's true.
So.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I was kind of curious too, and I won't take up much more time, on the signage. What kind of signs are you talking about?
We'll get back with designs on that. The sign that we have there now we like that sign, but it's small. Mm-hmm. You drive down the road and you can almost miss that because that's a state highway going through there. So I imagine that what we're going to come back and propose is upgrades to that existing sign.
And the playground equipment, are you looking at covered play area? I know
we would look at something.
That's a big thing now with people not wanting hot sliding boards like we had when we were kids.
That's right. That's right. I still remember those. This would be something more consistent with what we have at the airport. We'd be looking at something very similar to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Linville.
I have one more question, please. a while ago, I had met with you or discussed with you the concept of blueways in Pickens County, blueways maps, or also a small monitor where someone could know water levels for paddling. Is that possibly, I mean, it would have to be linked to a website where someone could check it, but there's a lot of, I think there's one in Greenville, in one of their parks, where you can go and check water levels to see if that's possible to put if you're already doing some projects there. I would appreciate someone looking into that so you could check on paddling days.
It's a good point. I'll look into that. If you go to, I think it's paddlesc.com, you can get a lot of data. It's not necessarily that data, but access points. I'm just taking advantage of you raising the issue to publicize that.
Yeah.
But we could look at maybe incorporating some data like that into
Because a lot of the
site.
other places to put in on that river are not official parks. So if we have that one place to put in, that's one of our official ones, maybe we could put some indicators there or track.
I'll look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sager.
you know, while you're there, you might as well, my suggestion to the representative in Clemson and Central is while they're there is to finish everything that you want to do. I mean, you could actually allocate some rec money that you have left over to do that. And that will save them 2 trips down there. I mean, I think what was it, Long Shoals Park, I think we took about $22,000 from my rec fund and, you know, help finish up the project.
If it suits, as we're looking at costs and putting this out to bid or getting in, what we'll probably do with a project this size is get 3 bids and move forward without a sealed bid process. But we can look at what some other costs might be and come back to you with a proposal next month.
Do we not have people in-house that can do some of this?
We'll do some of it in-house, undoubtedly. It's a good question, but yes, we will.
All right.
Other questions, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve this funding for this purpose, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Motion carries. Next on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. I have administrator roof replacement to the Committee of the Whole and emergency services to the Committee of the Whole. Ask for a motion and a second to for these 2 consent agenda items. Councilman Seta, do I have a second?
Second.
Vice Chairman, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding these 2 items, please signify by raising your hand. It's unanimous. Item 13 is executive session tonight. I have one item that I'm requesting we go to executive session for, and that's personnel county employee recognition. Do I have a motion and a second that we go to executive session for this item and this item only?
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Lawless. No any discussion on that? None. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.